Hey gang, I wanted to talk to you about float tanks, floating, or also known as sensory deprivation therapy. So we're going to go over the what, why, how, where, and when of floating. This is something that I love, and I want to share with all of you. The what of floating is you're in a float tank. A float tank is about probably like a 3 by 8 foot box that's about like this tall, about a couple feet tall. I don't want to call it like coffin size, but it's like a really large box for a human. And within that box is about a foot to 18 inches of hypersalinated water. This is water that is filtered, and it is hypersalinated. They put Epsom salts in there, and this makes it so that, like the Dead Sea, you float on top very easily rather than kind of sinking and worrying about drowning. And the float tank itself is, once you climb, so you climb in, you open the thing, you open a door, you climb inside, you get into the water, and you lay there. And also you close the door. So when you close the door, that shuts off cuts off all light entering the float tank. And when you lay there, your ears are underneath the level of the water, and ideally these float tanks are relatively soundproofed. So the experience of floating is you're laying there. You're laying in the water. The reason why it's called sensory deprivation is because really the only things that you can experience are your body. Really, it's just your body, because the water is body temperature, so you don't really tell where the water begins and where you end. And you only hear, the only things you can really hear are your own breath and your own heartbeat. And you don't see anything because it's totally blacked out. And you don't really feel anything unless you move, unless you physically create some motion in the water and the waves ripple around. Sometimes they might have a little floaty in there, so you can put it under your neck just in case you're used to having a pillow when you lay down, and maybe like the totally neutral position might feel like you're overextended. So the actual experience of floating is one of complete relaxation. You don't have to hold yourself upright as you do with your postural muscles, especially in your back, upper back, lower back, high in your neck as well, especially your neck. You can finally relax. Your body is able to decompress and just circulate all this good stuff, lymph and blood, and your body doesn't have to hold itself up. It can totally relax. In terms of spinal compression, it can finally decompress a little bit. I feel like I come out a little bit taller, or maybe it's just a little bit more pep in my step. And it's incredibly relaxing. That's the first step. So that's the what. The why. Why would you put yourself in a little box in which you can't hear, you can't see, you're just laying there, and the biggest, the most accessible reason is stress, tension, and anxiety reduction and management, really. Because when you're in there, you can finally tune into yourself rather than sort of being zipping around from thing to thing. Things that might be you might check your phone, you might see somebody might cut you off. You can totally relax and tune into your body for really the first time in probably a while. And this is something that is also done in terms. The reason why it's called, I like the term sensory deprivation therapy, is because this is given to people with chronic pain, post-traumatic stress, any sort of physical. Anytime you would feel disembodied, this is a great way to tune back in, and this leads to increased body awareness or proprioception. You generally, when you're walking around, you don't really feel too much of your body. Like, you don't feel your like intercostal muscles. You don't feel your first rib. You don't feel right underneath your chin. You don't feel deep in your hips. These are all sort of pass by because you have other things to worry about, like checking your phone or what have you. And when you are just floating, when you're just laying there, you have nothing else to focus on except your own body and your racing thoughts, which are totally fine to allow a race and what have you. But you are able to focus in on your body, on different parts where you're like, oh, I'm holding a lot of tension there. I just need to like relax my hip a little bit. And oof, I can sit a little bit taller. And like, oh, my head can go a little bit further back without like, I don't have to hold my neck up anymore. It's very profound. I always feel a lot more embodied and aware of what's going on here. And the final, but I think the most important reason is enhanced meditation. It's when if you sit on a meditation bench for an hour, you're ideally not thinking about your body. You're thinking about just your breath or whatever you happen to be focusing on for that meditation session or that mindfulness session. And when you are floating, it takes all of the postural issues out of it, because you should ideally be in a seated position when you meditate, and ideally you should be in a position of good posture, not slouching in a super gross position. That posture is a very important part of an ideal meditation session, and this allows. This is very accessible to. This is a lot more accessible to people than, say, trying to sit and meditate for an hour. And when you float for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours, you are able to focus in and rather than trying to separate yourself from your body, because if you start shifting around while you meditate, you start focusing on, oh, I'm shoulders around, I'm gonna move my neck, I'm gonna shift my hips around, oh, my feet are falling asleep, I need to shift around. That is all, those are all sort of aspects that would take you away from your breath. And by making relaxation or active embodiment a part of the meditation, it makes it so that almost that anybody can reach that higher level of or deeper meditation that you can experience when you are like 2 hours into a meditation session. It's much easier for people. They don't have to like there's no lead-in period. There's a very small learning curve. If people float for an hour, they might spend the first like half an hour learning how to relax, how to not like shift left, shift right, go up or down as you float, and hit the sides of the thing. It takes a little bit while to get settled, but once you're there, you're like, oh, I can relax. I can just breathe. And it's just it's a lot easier for most folks than trying to get them on a meditation practice. And for a lot of people, this might be a great way to sort of hit that deep experience of a meditation session without having to do like the couple, the week, the 2 weeks, the month of build up into meditation to really understand what's going on, how to do it, and how to approach meditation. This is like sort of a shortcut, so you're like, oh, that's what it's supposed to be like. Boom, done. Now when you go and sit on a meditation bench, you really understand what to be striving for and how to focus and what you should be feeling. And who should float? Everybody should float. I think everyone should. There are very few contraindications for a float tank experience. There are some people who might feel claustrophobic or who have past experiences of claustrophobia or anxiety in enclosed spaces. But this is not something where you're like strapped down into a box. You're not like buried underground. You are just floating in a body of water, and you can get up anytime you feel. So if the walls start feeling a little closing in on you, you can always just sit up, get out of there, gather yourself, and get back in. And the where of floating. Where can you find a float tank near you? Thankfully, this is something that is becoming more common. Float tanks are ranging in the $10,000 to $15,000 range, much more affordable than they were even 10 years ago. And there are float tank centers popping up everywhere, all over the country. Boston, there's one here in Tampa, all over the place. And they're becoming more common. The tanks themselves are becoming more advanced and circulating air quietly, so you can, I like to do a lot of breathing exercises, but I find sometimes the air gets a little stale, but that's because I'm breathing a lot. I like to do my box breathing in there. And there are also people that purchase and maintain float tanks in their homes, and then in order to sort of offset the cost of a $10,000 to $15,000 tank, they rent out, or they give out time. They buy out, rent out time for people to come, float and then they leave, and that sort of offsets the costs of having your own personal float tank, which is an ideal thing to have. And in any sort of float tank experience that you have, they will have like a shower in which you can you would ideally shower. You should shower beforehand to get any of the oils and grinds and smells and perfumes and fragrances off of your body, so that you do not bring it into the tank. Then you get in the tank, you have you're in that hypersalinated water, so that when you get out, it tends to get in your hair. It's a little gnarly, and you get a little. It's a weird feeling being in such hypersalinated water, and then you then go to the shower and rinse off and take a shower so you can get out of there, and you're not like super covered in salt that dries off on you. And then you go home and ideally shower again. But that's the where. And if you're do a quick search in any area you are, and there's going to be, if you're in at least a semi-metropolitan area, there's going to be a tank. And if you're not in a metropolitan area, there's probably somebody who has a tank that is hopefully renting out time. And when should you do it? The dose and the frequency. I highly recommend most people start with an hour, a single hour, just to sort of get settled, figure out if this is for them. And if you like that hour, which you will, you'll like that hour. It's going to be awesome. It's going to change your world, rock your world. Second time you can do a 90-minute, maybe a 2-hour. I personally love 2-hour floats. It gives me lots of time to go deep into my own body and really feel relaxed and invigorated afterwards. And in terms of frequency, however often you're willing to do it. In terms of cost, this is something that is about like a massage, about $1 a minute. So an hour float ranges from like $50 to $60. And then as you go to like 2 hours, it may be like $95, $100. So a little bit of a discount as you do more. But in terms of frequency, once a month, twice a month, depends on how stressed out your life is. As me personally, as in med school, I will ideally be doing this twice a month, and definitely before exams or big stressful events. This is something that can really just ground you, recenter you in a way that, a yoga session, meditation as maintenance, like general overall life maintenance, this is something that's just much more like relaxed. You feel like you're floating in space. It's great, in the greatest way, And this is something that should be seen as mental maintenance. This is something that should be seen as reconnecting yourself with your body, rather than just, your body is not just something in which you are driving through life. You are a part of your own body, and this is something that can tune you back into all the sensations, all of the feelings, all of the tension that you have and you store within your body and you aren't quite aware of. So this is something that is highly recommended for a regular basis, and it's just like an athlete should get regular sports massages, and anybody should get regular massages just to get that those tension and knots worked out by somebody experienced. This is something that can be done on a regular schedule and should be, and ideally in a perfect world, in a world that I want to live in, more people are floating and regularly. So I hope you liked this video. I hope it was informative, and I hope you start floating.